Hi, I'm Sharon Spangler. Welcome to this Council Connection. My guest is Dan Gustin, who represents Ward 1 of the City of Reno. And a very fitting topic. It's the end of the Aces season, second season for the Reno Aces. Isn't that amazing? I remember when they were just building that ballpark. How time flies.
Rushing to get it finished in time for the April start last year. And yeah, it's been a good second season. When you look at the attendance, they're right in the middle of the league. They didn't lead the league. Sacramento led the league with just under 1 million people, but Reno had 447,000, good attendance, average better than 6,200 a game, Sharon, and they had one sellout this year, and so appropriate. Baseball, Apple Pie, America, it was on July 4th, the stadium was sold out. They had 9,271 that day.
Similar to what it was the first year?
It was down just a little bit. But considering the economy, it didn't slide off the end of the table or off the end of the world. It was down a little bit, but it was still well within the range that they wanted, and they were happy with it.
I know being here at City Hall, when you go to leave work at like 5:30, 5:45, there's always a bunch of people heading for that ballpark, and I think that your numbers bear witness that it was a really good season.
It was a good season. So you get to leave at 5:30 or 6. You're lucky, huh? You get to go early. I'm teasing you, of course. But you're right. You can see the impact of when a game is on and when the team is out of town.
Yeah.
There's certainly an impact because there's just more energy downtown, more people moving around on the way to the ballpark, and it's a fun environment. Like any city who has a ballpark downtown in their metro area, it's really a fun event to even if you're not going, you see the people and you see the energy.
Have they done any surveys? Do they know if people are coming because they really like the team, they really like the whole experience?
You know, I think that's the second. It's the latter. They like the experience. Not that they don't like the team, don't get me wrong. The Diamondbacks love it here. When they visited to renew their contract for this year, they brought 9 people total. So 8 other people out of their front office other than their general manager because they really do like Reno. They're enamored with Reno. They like what the Cats-Offs with SK Baseball, Herb Simon, what they have done there. And that's what it comes down to. We find ourselves and our friends talking about the ballpark maybe a little bit more than the team because the team was 69 and 74. There were 5 games under 500 this year. But the people like the experience. I'll tell you what's a thrill, and maybe not be the best thing for you, but have you been there for 50-cent hot dog nights?
No, I haven't.
And you know they're not the cheap hot dogs. I hesitated the first time, and then I told my wife when we were there together, I said, you know, we're going to come back on more hot dog nights because it's a good dog for 50 cents and you can enjoy yourself. The other food's good, but I enjoyed that. They're trying to do things, as you know, between innings. They stir up the fans and they give things away, and it's the environment and maybe the experience, even though it's AAA baseball, and that's important. I don't want to downplay that in any way, but it certainly is the experience, and then the stadium itself. As you know, and people that have gone, the almost 500,000 that went this year and last year, it's an intimate environment. And I'll throw a little trivia at you. You know, I like to read, and I have in my hands the stack, the official numbers from this season. It's really interesting how Major League and AAA baseball, I mean, they calculate everything. They calculate, you know, how many times a dog went on the field and how many ants walked across the home plate, whatever. But we have the railroad tracks that border the left field fence, and we have the river that borders the right field fence. And you know how many, you know, we always talk about McCovey Cove and San Francisco and balls hit in there. Well, do you know how many were hit on the railroad tracks this year?
Oh my goodness.
They calculate these things. They hit 10 on the tracks, but they've yet to hit 1 in the river.
Is that right?
Yes. There's none.
Wow.
No home runs have gone in the river this year. Now that's a poke. For people who've been to the ballpark, you know, you've got to really hit the ball, hit it a long way to get it in the river.
Right.
But I'm looking forward to what's going to happen when that first player hits it in the river.
One of the good things about that ballpark is that it employed a lot of people this summer.
I did, and that's the employment is on everybody's mind and in the forefront. Everybody's looking. It's a political season, as you well know, and so many of the candidates from national office are talking about jobs, jobs, jobs. That's what it's all about, because if people have jobs, obviously, I'm just stating the blatant obvious here, that they'll spend money, they'll go to the ballpark. Even though the economy has been down, I think one of the great things about having a ballpark and a AAA team is the fact that people can get away from whatever else is bothering them and go and enjoy for 2.5, 3 hours, enjoy a ball game. That's what's really, really, I think, fun about the whole thing. And you see, when you're in the ballpark, you don't see a lot of frowns on people's faces, whether your team's ahead or behind. You know, you really don't. You see a lot of people laughing.
Eating those hot dogs.
Eating those 50-cent hot dogs.
Apart from creating some jobs, how else do you think the ballpark has affected the downtown area?
Well, I think it's brightened it. It's lit it up, if you will. And the nights they're not there, that's maybe a little different story. But as we talked about in just the opening portion of this, you talked about getting off work and seeing people around town, the synergy, the energy, the things that are going on downtown. You know, it's been slow coming back, obviously, and we're hoping that it's going to come back sooner than later. But those kind of things have stimulated it. I'll tell you the other thing that they have done, they want to do more things. SK Baseball wants to do more things. But the 3 restaurants that are there, Bugsy's, Duffy's, and Arroyo. Maybe I'm partial to Mexican food, but I love Arroyo. I don't know if you've been there or not, but the food is so good. And Duffy's, if you care to have a pastrami sandwich, it might not be the best thing for your diet and your figure, Sharon, but you know what? The pastrami sandwiches are absolutely amazing there. And the nice thing, if you want to go when the team's not there, it's less crowded, obviously, but valet parking right across the street. And I sound like I'm promoting it, and I have nothing to do with it other than the fact that I enjoy it, and it's in downtown Reno. But you have 3 restaurants now in downtown. Another one open across the street. Slice is there, where they serve pizza and beer. So that whole thing.
That's the owners of the Silver Peak, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It's great to see them moving down the river.
And what's great about it, the tower that's there, that was purchased last year, they're starting to put more people in. There's a major law firm that's moving there shortly, taking, I don't know how much of the space, but a big portion of the space. So the downtown is shifting a little bit east, not the central part of downtown, but that whole expansion, I think, is good for everything that we're trying to do in town.
Well, I know, having a 22-year-old daughter, that was the hot spot this summer, and I will probably continue to be the spot for people in that age group to go and meet up and have a few cocktails.
You know, the other thing I noticed coming out of the ballpark, along the fence, they have a fence. Did you notice how many bicycles were locked to the fence? Right. A lot of people ride their bike to the game. I mean, you know, when you're looking at 6,200 people in average attendance, that's the drop in a bucket for the people that ride there, but more than I've seen at other parks.
Are there plans to keep people coming downtown to those restaurants and to maybe other things going on down there in the off season?
You know, they have some plans. Originally, they talked about having some concerts and having different events. There are some scheduled, and I'm sorry I don't know what the schedule is, Sharon, but I know they've talked about that, and they need to do it because they have an investment in the restaurants that are there and their businesses that are there, and they can't just rely on people's memory to say, oh, let's go down to the ballpark and have something. So the more traffic they can generate, the better the restaurants will do. So I know they've got some things on the agenda. I don't know what they are.
But for our fans of the Reno Aces, the team will be back next year for a 3rd season.
Diamondbacks, what happens in the PCL? They have a player arrangement agreement, and you sign for 2 years at a time. And so the Diamondbacks were more than happy to get up here when the end of the season was near and say, look, we want to be back here, they're going to be back here. What's also interesting, and I talked about these numbers once before, it's just colossal when you look through left-handed pitchers, right-handed pitchers, what they do. This ballpark led the league in triples. Now, that may not sound significant, but there were 62 triples by the Reno Aces in the ballpark. It's a funny thing, and I was talking to T.J. Lasita, who is in charge of getting all this information out. He's the guy that compiles this every night, and every night after a game, they send it on to the big league club. I don't know who does at the other end, but somebody looks at all this stuff. And we were talking about the configuration of the ballpark, because the intimacy and the way the park is set up makes the outfield kind of interesting. When you come here for the first time, the most important outfielder is a center fielder in this ballpark, certainly, because the way it stretches out, you have to play it right, and you have to know what the other hitters are doing, the Aces are doing, because it's easy to get a ball over your head. Now, only one guy this year, Cole Gillespie, got 2 triples in a game, and if you get 5 to 6 triples in a year. That's a real big deal. There were 62 hit, as I said before, by the Aces. And I think a little bit has to do with the unfamiliarity of the teams coming in here with the ballpark. It's structured differently. And it's kind of an oddball figure. When I was looking through these, I love to go through these numbers, just kind of glance, and not that I know.
Such a sports guy.
Well, partially.
Go figure.
Partially. But, I just like to look and see what the idiosyncrasies are of different parks and things. And it's kind of interesting because I thought so in going to the games. Because almost every game I went to, I saw somebody hit a triple.
So what you're saying is fans get to see some pretty good ball when they go.
Yeah, and they get to see something you don't normally see. You can go to, I don't know how many Major League games and never see a triple. And you go to Reno Aces ballpark, and you'll see quite a few. The other thing is, do you know what day was the most successful day? The Aces, I mentioned that their record overall was 69 and 74. If you want to see your Aces win, you know what day you go?
Probably on an off day when there's nobody there, like the middle of the afternoon.
Go on a Thursday. They won more games on Thursday than any other day of the week.
All in the statistics.
That's the kind of thing that these guys compile and keep. They keep it home, away, et cetera, et cetera. So if you think you want to see the Aces have odds makers, they all go against the grain and try to figure out what's going on. The Aces win more games on Thursday than any other day of the week.
So if you're watching, take note of that. Thursday's probably a good day to go too.
Sure.
Probably not super crowded.
Why not?
Well, yeah, my office, I can see the ballpark, and I think, wow, it would be so much more fun to be out there, sitting out there in the hot sun and watching a game than sitting here in my office.
Yeah, it is enjoyable. It's a very enjoyable park. Going back to the reason, people love baseball in Northern Nevada. I've said to you before in shows we've had, I've always thought over the years, and I've done sports for almost 40 years now, and football gets everybody's juices going, and people pay more attention to football. I've always thought that baseball is the second most popular sport, and basketball is third. And Trent Johnson and Mark Fox and David Carter have done a good job resurrecting a program that in the early years Sonny Allen and others brought along. But that's starting to come on. But it's always been in the hearts and minds of people. I mean, you go around and you talk about, most of the people talk about Giants. There's some A's fans, obviously. There's some Dodgers fans, but baseball's huge here, and to have a AAA team in downtown Reno, I think is really a benefit for the people who live in this Northern Nevada area.
Did the fans this year get to see any players that ended up leaving and going on to something bigger?
Yeah, there were quite a few. I don't have an exact number. I was looking for that in ththese numbers, and I couldn't quite find it. But there were quite a few players that were up and down that were, I went one night to the Padre game, and they were rehabbing one of their ace pitchers, a guy 6'6", and he was out there throwing. They needed to get him some work. So the Diamondbacks would rather send people here, I was told by management, than any place else, because they know the way the players are treated. And players coming down on rehab, and I'm talking about players coming down now, but players have gone up certainly. At the end of the year, they had 4 or 5 that went up. But they know that it's a different level of treatment at the major league level, but it's not that different here in Reno. The people in Reno take care of the players. They really look out and say, you're part of the organization. We want you to be here. Then the other thing is, the field is a very safe field. And when you have the investment that you have in these major league players, millions of dollars a year that most of them are making, they want them to play in an environment where they're treated well, so their mind, their psyche is into baseball. And secondly, when they're on the field, they're very safe. And this is a tremendously safe field because it's so well groomed, so well maintained, and they enjoy sending them here.
Switching gears a little bit, the owners of the stadium and the team, they've done one expansion. We talked about the restaurants. Are they still planning to expand some more down there?
It's all based on the economy, obviously, like everything is that when you talk about retail business. They're still looking, they come from the shopping center world. Simon Properties, he's the principal owner along with the Katzoffs, Jerry Katzoff and his son Stuart. They're all been in the retail business, and that is really their main focus. It isn't baseball, although they've looked around and they've branched out into other sports. But they're looking to eventually, they've acquired property around the Freight House district, as we call it, in that area, and they're looking to eventually put more retail in downtown Reno. That certainly is their major focus, but it's all about timing and about financing and about the opportunity.
I know that they bought the Reno Bighorns, and that season is just around the corner.
Yeah, that starts, I believe, November 20th is their first game. Eric Musselman is their coach this year, who coached at the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors, and he's had a couple tryout camps. And I understand down in Golden State in the Bay Area in Oakland, at the Coliseum when they had the tryout. They had 50 players, and a lot of players that had either played in Europe or played at the D League, or a few of them that had been in the NBA. He's one of the new additions. Some of the other things, they're changing some seating in the event center, where they're going to have, they've had the courtside seats. Now they're going to have courtside suites.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Which is kind of interesting. So a group of people or one person can buy a suite, and I think it seats 8. And I don't remember what the pricing is, but I think it's fairly reasonable when you consider they have 25 games, you have 8 seats, and it's just on risers, just a little bit above the floor. So you can sit there, and there'll be food and beverage service for you. So that's one of the changes. I don't know all the other changes, but there are some other seating changes that they're doing, but they're going to try to, they were in the playoffs last year, which in your second year, that's a big step to make. So they're trying to take it up another notch.
They're a great team to watch. They really are. I love watching the basketball.
You know, that's the thing about basketball, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I've had people come up to me time and time again and say, I didn't know the quality of a ball was this good.
Oh, great.
Some people think it's equivalent to City League because they haven't been there. And the main thing with the Bighorns is experience. Get to a game, experience a game, and then determine whether you really like it or don't like it, because you see the players. I like the University of Nevada. I've had some fine players come through. A couple of them have played for the Bighorns. Gary Hill-Thomas, Mo Charlo have played for the Bighorns. You'll see the best players in the WAC conference who don't make the NBA or go to Europe play in the D League. So these are high-quality players. It's a 24-second clock, as opposed to a 35-second clock in college ball. And they're very skilled players, and they know that the chance they have is to show at this level if they want to get to the big show, the NBA.
That's great. Well, Dan, thank you for filling us in on how the Aces did this year.
Sure. I think maybe that not everybody has all these numbers, but I'll bet there's some people out there that go through the stuff like I do to see, that's interesting that happened.
There's quite a few baseball fans in this town. And I look forward to the Bighorn season. We'll bring you back on and talk about that.
Terrific. Thank you, Sharon.
And thank you all for joining us.